the election was stolen by more people voting for Donald Trump. It's quite a caper. Ocean's 74 million. But there! Trump spoke to the people. Democrats never once mentioned Arnold Palmer's never once.
You know what's wild? After all the drama, all the predictions, all the experts swearing they knew how things would go, it turns out the election was stolen the old-fashioned way, by more people voting for Donald Trump. Imagine that. No shady ballot stuffing, no conspiracies in the basement of a pizza shop, just millions of Americans walking into the booth and saying, yeah, I'm going with Trump. 74 million of them, to be exact. Oceans of voters. And that right there is what left Democrats scrambling for excuses. These days, it's almost become a spectator sport to watch left-wing commentators roast their own party. Remember, this is the same crew that usually insists everything is fine, the strategy is flawless, and the voters just didn't understand them. But after last year's embarrassment, even die-hard progressives are lining up to take shots. The latest voice joining the dog pile is comedian Jon Stewart, and let's just say, he's not holding back. Stewart is accusing the DNC and their media buddies of being clueless, arrogant hacks who walked Kamala Harris straight into an election disaster. Now, if sharp political fire is your thing, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're about to break down is exactly why the Democrats' supposedly perfect machine went down in flames. So let's start with the so-called experts. You remember those guys, right? The ones with the fancy suits, the smug smiles, the endless charts. For months, they told us the race would be razor thin. Oh, but don't worry, Kamala Harris would squeak out the win. Stewart absolutely shredded them, and honestly, it was deserved.
I guess you'd call it America. Was that we had all been told by many of our best prognosticators it was going to be close.
These pundits acted like their computer models and poll averages were gospel. We ran the numbers 100,000 times, and Harris wins in exactly 50,000 in one of them. Sounds impressive until you realize they were basically just guessing, and guessing wrong. Here's what Stewart nailed. It wasn't just bad math, it was arrogance. These people weren't analyzing reality, they were selling fantasy. They weren't looking at what voters cared about. They were clinging to their wishful thinking, protecting their team, and propping up the Democratic establishment. And it blew up in their faces. Why? Because the DNC was betting everything on what they thought was their ace up the sleeve, their secret weapon. And that weapon was Kamala Harris herself.
We ran the results in the computer 100,000 times. She won 50,001. He won 40,000 and 99, 90, 99. But in this coin flip country, I was confident because the Democrats had a secret weapon in a close election.
Democrats were convinced that Harris was history in the making, the first black female president. They assumed that identity alone would carry her across the finish line. No strong policies, no track record to brag about, just the symbolism. You probably remember the talking points. They poured into every TV segment. Representation matters. This is a groundbreaking moment. They were selling a coronation, not a campaign. But here's the problem. Everyday Americans weren't buying it. People weren't losing sleep over whether the next president checked a certain demographic box. They were worried about gas prices, grocery bills, jobs, safety, and whether their kids could build a future. So instead of being the Democrats' secret weapon, Harris turned into a liability. Voters saw through the packaging, and Stewart didn't hold back, pointing out that failure. Now, let's talk about money, because holy cash burn, Batman. The Harris campaign raised a staggering $1 billion. $1 billion. And what did they do with it? Well, if you were one of the unlucky people who got spammed with their endless text messages, you know where a lot of that money went.
Since joining the race, the vice president has raised an eye-boggling $1 billion.
Call me eyes boggled. See, the Democrats in a 50-50 election had $1 billion.
Stewart made fun of it perfectly. I'm in the tub. Why is Harris 2024 texting me again? Think about how absurd that is. Instead of sharpening their message, fixing Harris's image, or addressing issues voters actually cared about, they spent mountains of cash spamming people who immediately hit delete. Then they bragged about their ground game.
A war chest to be spent on data analytics, and polling, and consultants, and very clearly texting. There was a lot of texting. A lot of that money went to how the did they just text me, I'm in the tub?
50,000 volunteers knocking on 5 million doors in Pennsylvania alone. Sounds impressive until you realize half the people didn't want someone showing up twice with canned talking points.
The Harris campaign has a massive ground game, 50,000 volunteers.
With volunteers knocking on 5 million doors in Pennsylvania alone.
This is the first time some Democrats have told me they've ever heard of people knocking on the same doors a second time or a...
Even vacuum salesmen figured out that was a bad strategy decades ago. And that's the bigger problem. Democrats confused activity with effectiveness. It didn't matter how many doors they knocked on or texts they sent if nobody actually liked the candidate. They could have hired 1 million volunteers and it still wouldn't have fixed the fact that Harris wasn't connecting.
Even though everyone from vacuum salesmen to Jehovah's Witnesses know that's a losing strategy. In fact, they've known that for decades. Let's just spend $250 million on it.
But Democrats had another card to play. The Trump is a dictator scare tactic. You remember that one. Every time they stepped in front of a camera, it was the same script. Democracy is on the line. This is not a drill. If Trump wins, fascism is here. They went full melodrama, painting Trump as some Mussolini meets Darth Vader hybrid. And you know what? It got old.
But the reason why, and I give them some shit for their strategies, but there was a method to the Democrats' madness.
Democracy and freedom are on the ballot.
Our democracy is on the line.
We have to protect democracy.
We have to work even harder to make sure that we defend our democracy.
Stewart absolutely roasted this, pointing out that when every election is the end of democracy, the phrase stops meaning anything. It's just noise. Instead of persuading voters, it made Democrats look desperate. Voters stopped listening, tuned it out, and went back to focusing on their real-life problems.
We don't get to choose when we're asked to defend democracy. We just have to do it. And this is not a drill.
Noble words. And I'm glad to say Democrats did protect democracy. Just for the other side.
Meanwhile, Democrats were patting themselves on the back for building the most sophisticated voter protection program in history. Lawyers lined up across the country, court cases ready to go, contingency plans in every swing state. They had everything prepared, except the one thing that actually mattered, the voters. Stewart mocked them mercilessly. We've got the lawyers, we've got the clerks, we've got the posters. Wait, who brought the voters? Crickets.
We have millions in the bank ready with lawyers all over the country that are ready.
Democrats have been planning on every one of these options for 4 years. Are Democrats ready? You bet they are.
We have county clerks ready to go, secretaries of state ready to go.
So it's all lined up. What are we forgetting, people? What? We got the lawyers, we got the protecting the... What do we got? We got... Jimmy, did you bring the voters? Oh, I thought you were bringing the voters. I brought the hate has no home here posters. Nobody brought the voters? Where are the voters?
And here's the kicker. While Democrats were obsessed with theatrics, optics, and legal maneuvering, Donald Trump was on the ground, shaking hands, talking to people, hitting rallies that felt more like family reunions than staged productions. He wasn't rehearsing sound bites in a war room. He was out there actually listening to what voters cared about and saying, I won't forget you.
Trump spoke to the people. Democrats never once mentioned Arnold Palmer's never once.
Think about it. Democrats were hosting perfectly scripted rallies with Hollywood-level production. Trump was showing up in small towns, talking about groceries, rent, jobs. He spoke in plain, relatable terms. It wasn't polished, but it was real. And for millions of Americans, real beats polished every single time.
It turns out the election was stolen by more people voting for Donald Trump. It's quite a caper. Ocean's 74 million.
Even more devastating for Democrats, Trump started showing up in places they assumed they owned. Minority communities, tech circles, even podcast spaces with huge young audiences. He was everywhere. He didn't care if traditional media ignored him because he had other ways of reaching people, and that's what the Democrats never figured out.
So now, as many on the left fear the future, as they should, many others rue the past.
Joe Biden should have dropped out earlier.
There should have been an open primary.
People never got to know Kamala Harris.
So after the loss, what did Democrats do? Finger pointing. Suddenly everyone had a theory. They spent too much time on abortion. They picked the wrong VP. They alienated Latinos. They abandoned the working class. They should have gone on Joe Rogan. It was endless excuses. The same people who bragged for months about how airtight their strategy was suddenly wanted to pretend they saw the collapse coming all along.
They spend too little time talking about the economy.
Wildly overestimated the power of the abortion issue.
Chose the wrong VP.
Managed to alienate historic numbers of Latinos.
Abandon the working class.
Democrats need a new way to talk about urban America.
Do that Joe Rogan podcast.
But let's be real, the most glaring problem? Wokeness. Democrats drifted so far left, they stopped resembling common sense. They obsessed over forcing terms like Latinx on people who didn't want them. They pushed radical gender policies that scared parents and confused voters. They demanded people use specific pronouns or risk cancellation. They cheered on biological men competing in women's sports and acted shocked when people said, no thanks.
But it's a delight to hear about why it happened from so many people who were so wrong about what was going to happen. And everyone has their own pet theory. But there's one theory that a lot of people seem to be coalescing around.
And here's the thing, Stewart highlighted this perfectly. When Democrats made their campaigns about lecturing and shaming, people tuned out. Voters didn't want Twitter activism in the White House. They wanted leadership, they wanted solutions, they wanted someone who actually cared about their lives, not just their hashtags. And that's why they lost. It wasn't lack of money, they had billions. It wasn't lack of lawyers, they had an army. It wasn't even lack of media coverage.
Yet focus group after focus group said, got anything on Arnold Palmer's? If not, can you at least stand there and sway to Ave Maria for like an hour? Can you at least do that?
They basically had every major outlet in their pocket. They lost because they lost touch with reality. They bet everything on wokeness, optics, and fear-mongering, and forgot about the people who actually cast the votes. Trump didn't need $1 billion. He didn't need elite pundits vouching for him. He just needed to show up, speak plainly, and connect. And that connection crushed the Democrats' hollow theatrics.
They were too woke, insisting that people use the term Latinx.
Too far to the left on transgender rights.
You have to say they. No, you have to do this.
Stop with the virtue signaling.
Step away from woke.
So here's the bottom line. Democrats underestimated Americans. They thought voters could be scared, manipulated, or distracted into compliance. Instead, voters made them pay. And until the DNC learns that representation and hashtags don't put food on the table, they're going to keep losing. And if you ask me, that's a lesson worth remembering. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Democrats can recover from this kind of loss? Or are they too deep in their own echo chamber to change course? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'll be checking them out. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, things are only going to get spicier from here.